In the summer of 1969, a CIA officer named William Colby sat before a congressional subcommittee and was asked a direct question. How many people had the Phoenix program killed? Colby's answer was 20,587. He gave the number calmly, the way an accountant reads a balance sheet. The congressmen shifted in their seats. No one quite knew what to do with a number like that delivered in that tone of voice. Colby didn't flinch. He believed the program had been necessary. He believed it had worked. And in the specific narrow sense that he meant it, he may even have been right. But the question of whether it was legal, whether it was moral, whether the United States government had created a bureaucratic machinery for assassination and then run it for 6 years across an entire country, that question was never fully answered. It still hasn't been. The Phoenix program, known in Vietnamese as Phuong Hoang after the mythological bird, was formally established in 1968 under CORDS, the Civil Operations and Revolutionary Development Support, the civilian pacification arm of the American war effort. But its roots went back further, to 1967 and a CIA initiative called ISEX, the Intelligence Coordination and Exploitation Program. The idea was conceptually straightforward. The Viet Cong's military strength came from its political infrastructure, the shadow government it had built in villages across South Vietnam. Party cadres, tax collectors, intelligence agents, propaganda officers, local commanders. These people were not wearing uniforms. They did not fight in pitched battles. They organized, recruited, financed, and directed the armed struggle from within the civilian population. The CIA's conclusion was that killing Viet Cong soldiers in the jungle was like cutting grass. The roots remained. To win the war, you had to destroy the roots. The Phoenix program was the instrument designed to do exactly that. It operated through a network of provincial reconnaissance units, or PRUs, small teams of South Vietnamese operatives, often former Viet Cong defectors, trained and sometimes accompanied by CIA advisors and U.S. Special Forces. Each province had a Phoenix coordinator. Each district had targets. The targets were identified through intelligence reports, informant networks, and a system of dossiers maintained on suspected Viet Cong infrastructure members. When a name reached a sufficient threat threshold, a PRU team was dispatched. The preferred outcome, officially, was capture for interrogation. Defection under the Chiu Hoi amnesty program was also encouraged. But there was a third outcome, and everyone involved understood it was frequently the first resort rather than the last. The intelligence that drove Phoenix was deeply unreliable, and everyone inside the program knew it. A PRU operative might identify a neighbor as a Viet Cong cadre because of a genuine intelligence lead, or because of a personal grudge, or because denouncing someone as VCI was a way to settle a land dispute, eliminate a business competitor, or collect the bounty that sometimes accompanied a confirmed kill. The dossier system was supposed to filter out false accusations, in practice with quotas to meet, with American advisors measuring success in numbers neutralized. The filters frequently failed. The quota system was perhaps the program's most damning structural feature. Province chiefs and district chiefs were expected to meet monthly neutralization targets. Neutralization meant capture, defection, or death. The pressure to produce numbers pushed the system toward the easiest form of neutralization, which was not capture for interrogation, but killing in the field, where no awkward prisoner needed to be processed, housed, or explained. A dead man required only a body count entry. A prisoner required paperwork, a facility, an interrogation, a legal process that the South Vietnamese judicial system was wholly inadequate to provide. K. Barton Osborne was a U.S. Army intelligence officer who worked alongside Phoenix operations from 1967 to 1968. When he testified before Congress in 1971, he described what he had witnessed with a specificity that silenced the room. He described prisoners being thrown from helicopters during interrogation. He described a woman tortured with an electric device until she died. He described a prisoner who had a wooden dowel driven through his ear canal into his brain. Osborne told Congress he had never once seen a prisoner survive an interrogation, not once. In a program that officially valued intelligence over killing, this was the operational reality on the ground. The torture infrastructure was not improvised. The provincial interrogation centers, known as PICs, were built with American funding, staffed with South Vietnamese interrogators, and overseen by CIA advisors. The techniques used inside them drew on a body of knowledge the CIA had been developing since the early 1950s through programs like McCoy and the Kubark Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual, a 1963 CIA document that described in clinical detail the psychological and physical methods for breaking a human being. The Phoenix program applied those methods at industrial scale across 44 provinces simultaneously. The official numbers, as Colby presented them, showed 20,587 killed, 28,978 captured, and 17,717 who defected under the Chiu Hoi program between 1968 and 1972. Total neutralizations, 81,740. Those numbers were accepted by Congress with minimal scrutiny. What Congress did not examine carefully was the quality of those numbers, where they came from, who was counting, and what incentives existed to inflate them. South Vietnamese province chiefs who failed to meet their monthly quotas faced professional consequences. The pressure flowed downward. District chiefs pressured PRU team leaders. PRU team leaders pressured their operatives. And at the bottom of that chain, in the dark, in a village at 3 a.m, the easiest way to produce a confirmed VCI neutralization was to kill someone and classify them as Viet Cong infrastructure afterward. The dead cannot dispute their classification. In a country where personal and political grievances ran through every village like groundwater, the opportunities for abuse were limitless. Congressman Pete McCloskey, a Republican from California and a Marine veteran of the Korean War, visited Phoenix operations in the field in 1971 and came home with a verdict. He told colleagues that Phoenix was a program of murder and torture, not collateral damage, not operational excess, murder and torture as policy. McCloskey's assessment was not unique among people who saw the program up close. Robert Comer, the American civilian who had originally architected Cords and therefore Phoenix, later acknowledged that the program had significant problems with due process. That was the phrase he used, due process, for a program that killed more than 20,000 people. William Colby, who would go on to become CIA director in 1973, spent the rest of his life defending Phoenix as a legitimate counterinsurgency tool that had genuinely degraded the Viet Cong's political infrastructure. He was not wrong that the infrastructure was degraded. By 1972, even North Vietnamese commanders acknowledged that Phoenix had caused serious damage to their southern networks. The program worked, in the sense that a sledgehammer works. It broke things. What it also broke, along the way, were thousands of people who were not Viet Cong at all, and the legal and moral frameworks that were supposed to distinguish the United States from the enemy it was fighting. No one was ever prosecuted for what happened under Phoenix. Not a single CIA advisor, not a single PRU team leader, not a single province chief who had ordered his quotas met regardless of the accuracy of the intelligence. The Church Committee, the Senate Select Committee that investigated CIA abuses between 1975 and 1976, examined Phoenix as part of a broader review of American intelligence operations. It documented abuses. It issued recommendations. It did not produce indictments. The legal framework that should have governed Phoenix never existed in practice. The program operated in a country where the rule of law had been consumed by war, where the South Vietnamese government that was supposed to oversee it had its own interests and its own corruptions, and where American advisors operated under instructions that emphasized results and did not ask too many questions about methods. The institutional incentives pointed in one direction. The oversight mechanisms pointed in another. The oversight mechanisms lost. What Phoenix left behind was a template, the combination of targeted killing lists, intelligence dossiers, local proxy forces, and CIA coordination that defined Phoenix would appear again in subsequent decades in different countries under different names. The specific techniques, the PRU structure, the provincial interrogation centers, the pressure to neutralize rather than capture, these did not disappear when the last American advisor left Vietnam. They went into institutional memory, into classified after-action reports, into the careers of the men who had run the program and would go on to advise other governments on other insurgencies. In 1996, William Colby went kayaking alone on the South River in Maryland. He was 76 years old. He did not return. His body was found days later. The circumstances were ruled accidental. He had lived long enough to see the Cold War end, to watch the country he had served in Vietnam open to American tourists, to give interviews in which he maintained, consistently, that Phoenix had been a legitimate program conducted under legitimate authority in the context of a legitimate war. He never wavered. He never apologized. And the 20,587 names in his balance sheet remained exactly what they had always been, a number delivered in a tone of voice that still, decades later, makes people shift in their seats. There is a video on screen right now that goes deeper into the CIA's hidden war in Southeast Asia. Subscribe. These are the stories that the official record was designed to make you forget.